Okay, so today's video, we're going to take a very quick look at converting between fractions and decimals. So for our first question, we want to change from a decimal to a fraction. We want to write zero point 0.3 as a fraction in its simplest form. So the simple way we can do this is to take a look at the place value of the final digit of the number. The final digit here is 3. And we can see that the 3 is in the tenths column. So because that final digit is in the tenths column, we can write this fraction as a fraction over 10. So now all we need to do is write down all the digits in the number without the decimal place. So we've got 0 and 3, well we can write that as just 3. So 0 0.3 as a fraction is 3 tenths. We can't simplify it anymore, so that is our final answer. 0 0.3 is equivalent to 3 tenths. Okay, and now to go from a fraction to a decimal, we want to turn 3/5 into a decimal. So we may know what some of our unit fractions are as a decimal. So we can see we're working with fifths, so we may already know that 1/5 is equivalent to 0.2. So that means all I have to do to find 3/5 is multiply it by 3. So that's going to give me 0.6. But they're not always going to be this straightforward. So let's take a look at another method. So to figure out 3/5 as a decimal, we can actually write this as 3 divided by 5. So then all we have to do is work out what that division gives us. So I'm going to use short division here. I'm going to do 3 on the inside divided by 5 on the outside. So to begin with, how many times does 5 fit into 3? Well, it doesn't. So I know I'm going to have to carry over a remainder. So what I'm going to do here is put a decimal here and carry over a couple of zeros. I may need to use some more, but a couple will do for now. And then I'm going to put a decimal point above as well. So we said that 5 fit into 3 0 times. So I'm going to carry that 3 over to the next digit. So we now want to see how many times does 5 fit into 30. Well, that fits 6 times exactly. So because it's fit exactly, we don't need this extra 0. We don't need to carry on any further. We know that we've reached our final answer. So 3/5 is equivalent to 0.6. So that's what we can do in those scenarios. Whenever we've got a fraction that we want to convert to a decimal, we can simply do the numerator divided by the denominator. So hopefully those couple of examples made sense. We're now going to take a look at a few more practice questions. So feel free to pause the video here and have a go at these, and we'll go through the solutions in just a few moments. Okay, so for this first question, we want to write 0.7 as a fraction in its simplest form. So the first thing we're going to do is look at the place value for the final digit. Well, we can see that this 7 is in the tenths column. So because it's in the tenths column, I can write this as a fraction over 10. So now all I need to do is write down all the digits in the number without the decimal place. So I've got 0.7, which I can just write as 7. So that gives me 7 tenths. So I can't simplify that fraction any further. So this fraction in its simplest form would just be 7 tenths. Okay, for this next question, we want to write 0.12 as a fraction, again in its simplest form. So again, the first thing we're going to do is look at the place value of the final digit, which in this case is a 2. Well, we can see that that 2 is actually in the hundredths column. So because that final digit is in the hundredths column, that means that we can write this as a fraction over 100. So again, all I need to do now is write all the digits down without the decimal place. So we've got 0, 1, 2, which I can just write it as 12. So 0.12 as a fraction is actually 12 hundredths, but then we need to write it in its simplest form. So we need to divide the numerator and denominator of this fraction by the highest common factor of both numbers. Well, the highest common factor of 12 and 100 is actually 4, so that means I can divide both top and bottom by 4. Well, if we do 12 divided by 4, that's going to give us 3. And if we do 100 divided by 4, that's going to give us 25. So that would be our answer in its simplest form. So 0.12 is equivalent to 3/25. Okay, moving on, we now want to write 1.74 as a fraction in its simplest form. So again, all we're going to do is take a look at the place value of this final digit, which in this case is the 4. Well, we can see that that 4 is in the hundredths column. So that means we can write this fraction over 100. So for the numerator, all we need to do is write down all the digits in the number without the decimal place. So we've got 174. So that's what I'm going to put on the numerator, 174 over 100. So we can see we've got an improper fraction now, which makes sense given that our decimal was greater than 1. So now we want to write this 174 hundredths in its simplest form. So we want to find the highest common factor of both of these numbers. Well, the highest common factor of both of these is actually 2. So that means I can divide the top number by 2, and I can divide the bottom number by 2. So if I do 174 divided by 2, that's going to give me 87. And if I do 100 divided by 2, that's going to give me 50. So as a fraction in its simplest form, 1.74 is equivalent to 87 50ths. So we can leave it as an improper fraction. However, if we were asked to leave it as a mixed number, we could change this into 1 and 37 50ths. Okay, we're now going to convert a fraction to a decimal. We've got 7/8 that we want to write as a decimal. So using the method we talked about before, 7/8 we can figure out as a decimal by doing 7 divided by 8. So I'm going to use some short division. I'm going to have 7 on the inside, 8 on the outside. So to begin with, we want to see how many times does 8 fit into 7? Well, it doesn't, so we can see we're going to have to carry some numbers over here. So all I'm going to do is put a decimal here and just put some zeros. And then I'm going to put a decimal above as well to match. So we said, how many times does 8 fit into 7? Well, it doesn't. It fits 0 times, so I'm going to carry that 7 over to the next digit. We then want to see how many times does 8 fit into 70? Well, that'll fit 8 times, because 8 multiplied by 8 gives me 64, leaving me with the remainder of 6. So I'm going to bring that 6 down here. We then want to see how many times does 8 fit into 60? Well, that'll fit 7 times, because 8 multiplied by 7 is 56, leaving me with a remainder of 4. So I'm going to bring that down. And then how many times does 8 fit into 40? Well, that fits 5 times exactly. So because it's fit exactly, I can stop there. I know I've reached my final answer. So 7/8 is just 0.875. Okay, for this next question, we want to write 1/3 as a decimal. So again, we can figure this out by doing 1 divided by 3. So I'm going to use some short division again. And we want to see how many times does 3 fit into 1. Well, we can see it doesn't. We know we're going to have some remainders here. So I'm going to put a decimal with just some zeros. And then I'm going to match the decimal above. So how many times does 3 fit into 1? That fits 0 times. So we're going to carry the 1 over to the next digit. We then want to see how many times does 3 fit into 10? Well, that'll fit 3 times, because 3 multiplied by 3 is 9, leaving me with a remainder of 1. And now we can see we've got the same as before. We've got 10 again. So we would do how many times does 3 fit into 10? Well, it would be 3 again, because that is still 9, leaving us with a remainder of 1. So we can see the pattern here, but this 3 is going to recur. So we're going to have 0.33, goes on forever. So I can write this as a final answer as 0.3, and then because it recurs, I can just put a dot above that 3. So 1/3 as a decimal is equivalent to 0.3 recurring. Okay, and for this final question, we want to write 3/16 as a decimal. So let's move this to a new page. We've got a little bit more room. Okay, so similar to before, to write 3/16 as a decimal, all I'm going to do is the numerator divided by the denominator. So I'm going to use short division again. All I'm going to do is 3 divided by 16. Well, we can see the first step here would be how many times does 16 fit into 3? Well, we know it doesn't, so we're going to have some remainders. So I'm just going to put a decimal point here, and I'm just going to bring some zeros in, and I'm going to match the decimal above as well. So as we said, how many times does 16 fit into 3? Well, that fits 0 times, so I'm going to carry that 3 over to the next digit. We then want to see how many times does 16 fit into 30. Well, that fits once, because 16 multiplied by 1 is 16, and then that leaves us with the remainder of 14. So I'm going to carry that 14 over to the next digit. So now we want to see how many times does 16 fit into 140. Well, we may not know our 16 times table, so that makes it a little bit more challenging. But I do know that 10 multiplied by 16 is 160, which is quite close to the answer that we actually need. So we can actually work backwards now. If 10 times 16 is 160, then 9 multiplied by 16 must be 16 less. So if we take 16 off that 160, we'd get 144. So looking back at the question, we need 140, so that's still a bit big. So let's go down again. Let's go down to 8. That means 8 multiplied by 16, again, must be 16 less than 144, which is 128. So when we look back at the question again now, how many times does 16 fit into 140? Well, we can say it fits in 8 times, because we know that 8 multiplied by 16 is 128. That's going to leave us with a remainder of 12. So I'm going to carry that 12 over to the next digit. So now we want to see how many times does 16 fit into 120? Well, looking back at our list, the smallest number we have is 128. So let's come down again. What would 7 multiplied by 16 be? Well, it'd be 16 less than the number above. So if we take 16 off 128, that's going to give us 112. So looking back at the question, how many times does 16 fit into 120? Well, that would fit 7 times, because 7 multiplied by 16 is 112. That's going to leave us with a remainder of 8. So I've got another remainder to carry over here, so I'm going to extend my line, bring another 0 down, and carry that 8 over. So now we want to see how many times does 16 fit into 80? Well, that'll fit exactly, because if we notice that 10 multiplied by 16 was 160, 80 is just half that amount. So 80 is the same as 5 multiplied by 16. So 16 fits into 80 5 times exactly. So I can stop there because I know I've reached my final answer. So 3/16 as a decimal is 0.1875. So well done if you followed along with those questions. And that's it for this video. If you want to check out any other videos on working with fractions, decimals, and percentages, then I've left some links down for them in the description, and I've also put a card in the top corner, so feel free to check them out. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, please feel free to leave a like and consider subscribing. If there are any topics you'd like me to go through next, then please just let me know down in the comments, and I'll try to make some videos on those topics as soon as possible. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.